Okay? First, we all know about these national development policies. We all know about PNG TP, our National Goals and Directive Principle, Tamil founding fathers of this nation, they came up with that, okay? And then we came up with Vision 2050. And then we came up with PNG Development Strategy, 2010-2030. And then we have STARS, which is actually implementing the UN Development Goals for the country. And then we have recently in 2016, the SME Master Plan, okay, 2016 to 2030. And then of course, recently during this term, we now have the provincial government also trying to translate what we have in those policies to our own plan in terms of what we can achieve. But let's check, let's have a reality check. What did we achieve? How have we been doing? Okay? I've just put some trend there. Okay? Over the last 5 years, our dependence in terms of finance from the national government have been between 75 and 80%. So what we have, which we can generate internally, is between maybe 20, 25%. That's the percentage. Okay? So on average, when we look at it, time you may come up financially autonomous now. It means that we're looking at cutting out that 68 million from the national government. And when we cut that down, how can we survive on the 22 million? The projected average for the next 5 years, yearly average, is 23 million a year. Taking into account that we still have that 68 million, where will it come from? How do we generate it? Okay? So I actually have put some thought, it's about 200 pages, on what type of activity, and that contains 20 top key impact projects that the committee can appoint a working planning financial committee to identify those key impact projects that by 2030 we are able to sustain ourselves at about an annual budget of about 90 million kina per annum, without depending on the national government. That's when we are talking about full financial autonomy. You may can look at lo money we mix him. Okay? So some thought. Reviving business arm from Manus. I was speaking to the finance manager and the administrator that in any successful provincial government, a good model like East New Britain, they could have a very high dividend income from the business arm in terms of supporting the recurrent budget. Okay? And over the years, as various governors and administrators, now open member, you can testify that the dividend income from the business arm is very insignificant. Okay, so how do we do that? Maybe 5 million kina from PSIP and 2 million kina from or DSIP. So format. We need to have the savings culture for investment. Money come, the mentality of me. You come, you spend it. You come, you spend it. What about your future? Maybe you look at your budget, okay? Because 68 million kina is quite a lot of money if you want to get under autonomy tomorrow, or next year for that matter. Okay, so you recapitalize business arm. Okay, come from a personal commercial perspective. Okay, maybe you offer shares to the Manusians so that you contribute, you capitalize in company, and then you increase your investment portfolio. So year after year, you have dividend income from a good dividend income from the business arm supporting the recurring budget. Public-Private Partnership Act was passed in 2014. Though it was focused on the JV with the private sector on infrastructure and utilities, goods and services, we already have seen in the past 2 years joint venture between government, some provincial government, some state agencies, and the private business going into commercial ventures. Okay? For those of you in the Google group, you remember that between 2010 and 2011, I proposed that one of the vehicles in which we can mobilize savings, both from the young people in the village, from a fisherman to the working class, is a unit trust. Okay? And between these years, I've prepared that document. It's ready to go to the Securities Commission to approve, to launch, so that our people have an alternative investment vehicle to invest in. Okay? It's just one of the impact key projects. Yeah, I've just put it there in this example. But when the planning company is together in this autonomy project, you need to consider joint venture between government and our private investors. We have a lot of successful business men and women here in Manus, not only in Manus, but outside of Manus as well. Okay, whatever viable commercial venture that you want to go into, you can mobilize equity, long establish small nobler business with the government, of course. And then also Enoch here, the planning committee should sit down and identify 20 impact projects in various economic sectors in industry that by 2030, which is the deadline of the vision of the current Manus Development Integrated Development Plan, by 2030, we should be at a financially autonomous level that we want by 2030. 10 years, is that achievable, given 68 million kina? So the current integrated development plan for the 5 years is basically based on the fact that, okay, we continue to rely on the government for the next 5 years, giving us the 68 million. So do we want autonomy now, financial autonomy now, or do we want to organize ourselves in establishing the legislative structure, the legislative documents, and the plan that we can start see a gradual increase. By you graduate long, 23 million. Next year you got 30 million. Another year you got 40 million. Until you reach what? We have a target of 90 million per annum. On average over the 5 years, how are we going to raise the difference to support our budget, annual budget of 90 million kina a year? An example of impact project here. For example, if we look at the special economic zone, for example, okay, special economic zone, for example, and I'm proposing that we have two, one for the SME and one for the higher corporate investors, okay? So that when you lease, for example, if you have, for argument's sake, if you have 100 blocks, okay, of a special economic zone, each one renting for 200,000 kina, you already have 20 million kina a year. And if you have start at 300 SMEs, you give them a minimum rent lease of an SME block of 20 million, 200,000, you're getting 6 million a year, 26 million already. So it's just, I'm just throwing out there for the planning committee to sit down so that if you want to achieve a full financial autonomy by 2030, in terms of the provincial government vision now, this is what you need to do. You go back to the drawing board, you sit down, which of economic economic interest sector is able to gradually generate 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, and 90 million. So maybe 10 years, maybe it's too ambitious. How about maybe 20 years in terms of full financial autonomy? There's been a lot of talk of international seaport, transit port, and seaport. Okay? You hear a lot of people saying, how about Manus become the Singapore of the South Pacific? Is that possible? Is that possible? It's possible. It's possible. If Lee Kuan Yew can do it, so how many masters and PhD brains in Manus can do it? We can do it. It's not impossible. But it needs a gradual planning and stage in terms of achieving where we want to go. SME growth. A lot of, since attending this forum in the last 2 days, plenty of man Mary, lo here, oliba arasim, na mipla or something. You play to talk lo big project na mipla, or man na Mary, how about you alibi mipla? Okay? According to the master plan, SME master plan, 2016-2030, right now, all around the country, we have about 49,500 SMEs. Okay? For Manus, according to the research, right now you have 1,479. And the quota that has been given to Manus in terms of your KPI is that by 2030, you must have at least 8,000 plus 300 SME members here. How do you achieve that? Midok finish, all planning, man Mary Bluimi now comes in out there. The role of the provincial government is to create an enabling environment. Okay? You may say you got 4 factors of production: ground, land, infrastructure, capital, money, want them human capital. Okay? Research over the last 15 years, I mean, show you one of the biggest inhabitant long SMB growth and lack of ground. So how about provincial government, you negotiate with the landowners here, you identify 2 big blocks, plan you talk nagat, we start action now. 2 big blocks, 1 block SME, they start doing what we have to do. Okay? The special economic zone or tax-free zone, it needs a very high level planning, okay? That belongs to the committee to advise the governor and the open member as to how we will achieve that. But for now, let's start with our own people. Let's start with our own people. As I was walking, the day arrived on Tuesday. We have entrepreneurship skills. And over the last 2 days, if we don't have cash in our pocket, you still can kai saksak na pis. We won't die without money. Which means we are still able to survive. And in terms of planning, we have a lot of time to play. Okay, we have a lot of time to plan. All Japanese is a plan long, 50 years. Now only implementing 1 year or so. Also now, they are neck to neck. I think now they are coming number 3 in terms of the global ranking economy. But the point is planning, proper planning. Vision, mission, goals. For province, it's already outlined in the integrated development plan. How do you achieve that? With a shortfall of 68 million kina? Or vice versa, how can we raise the shortfall in order to have that annual budget from 90 and 100 million kina a year? One blood of brass plum is at the same. Good blood vision you got, but vision without action is like a wet dream. So action you must start now. After this forum, the planning committee must sit down and start crunching the numbers. You must run the provincial government like a business. The business all the income, profit. The running government all the deficit and surplus. So the planning of the committee in terms of what you want to achieve in financial autonomy must start now. Okay? Is 2030 realistic? can we put it to 20 years if you want to become financial autonomous? But action is start now. Planning must start now. Also, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. Think big. Coincidentally, some speakers have thought like that. Pen Cassidy to think big. We are a province on the periphery, but we can make Manus as the entrance to the country. That is possible. It is the willpower. Because God, let me give you awesome, you must come up head, not blow tail. Why never you are him, Narulaman, he can create him wholesale, while you can create a wholesale and he becomes a retailer. Thank you, Nami. Wish him this forum a success. And I once again thank the governor and the open member for that bold step to get the brains together to try and do the initial groundwork towards financial autonomy in eventually full self-government. We have the brains to do it. We can do it. It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. Okay, where there is a will, there is a way. Thank you for your attention.